Rain pounded the roofs of the houses in Des Plaines, turning the quiet streets into muddy streams. Detective Keyshawn Parker was on his way to a 6 a.m. call. His squad car cut through the puddles, splashing water on the sides. Parker didn't like days like this, gray, damp, with the smell of death wafting through the air. The two-story house on Pine Street was no different from its neighbors, except for a cluster of police cars with flashing lights and yellow tape stretched at the entrance. Parker got out of the car, pulled up his coat collar, and headed toward the house. Patrol Officer Bridges nodded to him, lifting the tape. "Inside, sir. Living room. Victim is Elijah Brooks, 34 years old. Found by his wife returning from the night shift." Keyshawn entered the house. The smell of blood mingled with the aroma of coffee that had apparently been brewed the night before. In the living room, on the floor near the couch, lay the body of a man. A dark pool of blood soaked into the light-colored carpet. A single gunshot wound in the chest, eyes open, surprise frozen in them. "Time of death?" Parker asked, putting on latex gloves. "Preliminary estimate between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., replied M.E. Royce, leaning over the body. "Shot at close range, bullet lodged in the wall, ballistics is working on it." Keyshawn looked around the room. No signs of struggle, forced entry, or robbery. No weapons were found. There were 2 cups of unfinished coffee on the coffee table. "Where's the wife?" he asked. In the kitchen with Officer Carter," Bridges replied. "She's in shock, but insists she can talk." Parker nodded and made his way into the kitchen. At the table sat a woman with eyes red from crying. She clutched a paper handkerchief in her hands and stared at one point. Black hair pulled back into a ponytail, a medical uniform. Obviously, she'd really come from work. "Mrs. Brooks, I'm Detective Keyshawn Parker. I'm so sorry. If you're able, I'd like to ask a few questions." The woman looked up at him and nodded weakly. "Nia. My name is Nia Brooks. Go ahead." "Did you find the body?" Parker began, taking a seat across from her. "Yeah, I got back from my 6 a.m. shift. Elijah was lying, there. I called 911 right away." "When was the last time you saw your husband alive?" "Yesterday, around 4 p.m. I left my shift at St. Elizabeth's at 5 o'clock. I'm an emergency room nurse." Parker pulled out a notebook and made a note. "And you were at work until 6 in the morning?" "Yes." Nia rubbed her temples. "I can prove it. Multiple co-workers saw me. There are camera tapes, documentation. I never left the hospital." "We'll check," Parker said calmly. "Was there anyone your husband had a conflict with? Someone who might have wanted to hurt him?" Nia hesitated, rubbing her handkerchief. Elijah wasn't a conflicted person. He worked as a financial analyst, helping people with investments. Everyone loved him. "And at home? What was the relationship like?" The woman looked away. It was good, normal. Something in her voice made Parker suspicious. "Mrs. Brooks, in an investigation like this, every detail counts. If there was a problem between you two..." "We had an argument," Nia said sharply. "But this is a family matter, nothing to do with this." "Let me decide what it has to do with," Parker said softly, but firmly. Nia took a deep breath. "My sister Zaira can't have children. She and her husband have tried every treatment. The last chance is surrogacy with a donor. Zaira has asked Elijah to be that donor. He declined. I was upset with his decision. We had a fight, but that was 2 weeks ago. We haven't discussed the subject since." Parker wrote that information down. "Family drama is always fertile ground for tragedy. Can you give me your sister's contact info?" "Why?" Nia's tense. She had nothing to do with Elijah's death. "Standard procedure, Mrs. Brooks. We interview all close relatives." Reluctantly, Nia dictated Zaira's number and address. They live 15 minutes from here on Maple Avenue. After talking to Nia, Parker returned to the living room where the forensics team continued to gather evidence. Officer Bridges approached him with a clipboard. "Sir, I've canvassed the neighborhood. Mr. Holland, who lives across the street, Saw Mrs. Brooks' car last night around 10 o'clock. Says she arrived but left about an hour later. Parker raised an eyebrow. Interesting. And Mrs. Brooks claims to have been at work since 5 o'clock this evening. There's one more thing, sir. Mrs. Lambert, the neighbor to her left, heard a loud argument about 11:30, male and female voices, then a gunshot, but she thought it was on the television. A picture was beginning to take shape. Parker looked over the table of coffee cups and noticed a woman's lipstick on one of them. He pointed it out to the CSI. Run it for DNA and prints. In the hallway, Parker noticed a small drop of blood on the floor and footprints leading to the back door. Someone had stepped in a pool of blood and was trying to cover it up, but hadn't noticed the drop near the hallway entrance. Back in the kitchen, Parker noticed Naya packing her things as if about to leave. "Where are you going, Mrs. Brooks?" "To my sister's. I can't stay here." She waved her hand toward the living room. "Of course I understand. But there's something else I'd like to make clear first. Your car is a silver Toyota Camry, isn't it?" Nia froze. "Yes. Why?" "I'm curious, because the neighbor across the street saw your car pulling up to the house yesterday around 10 o'clock at night." Nia's face froze. "He's wrong. I was at work." "We'll check the hospital CCTV footage," Parker said. "But in the meantime, we have testimony that contradicts what you're saying." "I don't understand." Nia's voice shook. "Someone else could have come in a similar car." "It's possible," Parker agreed. "What about the argument the neighbor heard around 11:30? Male and female voices, then a gunshot." "I don't know anything about that," Nia cut her off. "I was at work. Check it out for yourself." Parker nodded. "We will. In the meantime, I'm afraid you'll have to stick around for more questions." An officer from the crime lab entered the kitchen and beckoned Parker over. "Detective, we found something in the bathroom," he said quietly. "It looks like someone tried to wash the blood traces off their hands. There were microscopic traces on the towel and in the sink. And we found gunpowder residue on the shower curtain, as if someone had wiped their hands on it." Parker glanced at Naya, who was anxiously watching their conversation. "Mrs. Brooks," he addressed her, "I'm going to have to ask you to come with us to the station. We have questions that require immediate clarification." "I don't understand." Naya looked frightened. "I just lost my husband and you suspect me of something?" "At the moment, we are just gathering information," Parker diplomatically answered. "But your statement contradicts the witnesses and the evidence found." At the station, Parker led Nia into the interrogation room, a small room with gray walls, a table and 3 chairs. Turning on the tape, he began the formal interrogation. "Mrs. Brooks, tell us again about your routine yesterday." Nia repeated her story of leaving for work at 5 in the evening and returning at 6 in the morning to find her husband dead. "And your sister Zaira and her husband, where were they last night?" "I don't know," Nia shrugged. "Probably at home. We haven't talked on the phone. Tell me more about your sister's request to Elijah." Nia folded her hands on the table. "Zaira is 30 years old. She and Tavan have been married for 8 years, trying for a baby for 7. She had an ectopic pregnancy that ended with a fallopian tube removal, then more surgeries. Last year, doctors said she wouldn't be able to carry the baby. They decided to find a surrogate, but wanted the baby to be genetically theirs. Tavan has sperm issues, so Zaira asked Elijah to be the donor. And how did your husband react?" "He flatly refused." Naya's voice sounded bitter. "He said he didn't want his biological child to be raised in another family, even if it was my sister's family. Said it was a matter of principle." "And your reaction?" "I was upset. Zaira is my only sister. We are very close. I know how much she wants to be a mother. Elijah could have helped, but he refused because of some abstract principles." Parker made a note in his notebook. "Upset enough to leave your workplace, come home and fight with your husband?" "I didn't leave the hospital." Nia banged her palm on the desk. "I was at work from 5 p.m. to 6 a.m. "Then how do you explain the witness statements about your car outside the house at 10 o'clock at night?" And the traces of blood in the bathroom? And the fingerprints on the coffee cup someone drank from that left lipstick marks? Nia went pale. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it wasn't my car. Maybe Elijah was seeing someone. Mrs. Brooks, Parker leaned forward. I understand that you've suffered a loss, but lying only makes it harder. If you're really innocent, we need the truth to find the real killer. At that moment, a young officer entered the room and handed Parker a folder. The detective looked through the documents and looked at Nia again. We've received the surveillance footage from St. Elizabeth's Hospital. You checked in at the entrance at 5:15 p.m. and the exit at 9:43. Then you entered the building again at 11:20 and stayed there until 6 in the morning. Nia's face contorted. She lowered her head and covered her face with her hands. Is there something you want to say, Mrs. Brooks? Parker asked. I want a lawyer, Nia said quietly. Parker nodded. That's your right. But remember, we're trying to establish the truth. If you didn't kill your husband, someone else did. And the sooner we know the truth, the sooner we can find the killer. While Nia waits for a lawyer, Parker meets with another detective who went to interview Zaira and Tavon Rains. They confirm the conflict over the donation, Detective Ramirez reported. They say they were home all night watching a movie. Neighbors didn't see them go out anywhere. But the interesting thing is, Tavon admitted he called Elijah around 9 o'clock last night, tried to talk to him again about the donation. And what did Elijah say? He said the conversation was over, and he didn't want to discuss it anymore. Tavon says he was very upset, told his wife about it, and they decided to put the subject on hold for the time being. Parker thought about it for a moment. 3 people had a motive. Nia, protecting her sister's interests, Zaira, desperate for a child, and Tavon, eager to make his wife happy. And at least one of them, Nia, had been in the house at the time of the murder, though she denied it. An hour later, Parker was informed of the ballistics results. The bullet recovered from the wall had been fired from a Glock 19 pistol, a weapon that was not registered to Elijah or Nia. The results of the analysis of the lipstick on the cup also arrived at the crime scene. It belonged to Nia. Parker returned to the interrogation room where Nia's attorney was already waiting. Mrs. Brooks, the detective began, we have evidence that you were in the house at the time of the murder. Your lipstick on the cup, witness statements about your car, hospital camera footage confirming your absence at a critical time. Do you want to change your testimony? Nia looked at the lawyer, who nodded. I was at home, she admitted. I took a break from work and went home to talk to Elijah again about Zaire. We drank coffee, talked. There was no argument. I left around 11 and he was alive, I swear. I lied because I was scared. I knew how it would look. Was someone else in the house? Maybe Elijah was going to meet someone? No, he said he was going to bed. And the gun? Were there guns in the house? No, Elijah hated guns. We never kept one in the house. Parker made a note in his notebook. If the gun didn't belong to the couple, the killer must have brought it with him. That ruled out an argument that turned into a murder over a gun that happened to be nearby. Mrs. Brooks, you're still the prime suspect, Parker said. You were in the house shortly before the murder. You had motive, and you lied about your whereabouts. I didn't kill him, Nia exclaimed. Yes, I was angry, but not angry enough to kill him. He was my husband. I loved him despite our differences. Parker studied her face, trying to determine if she was telling the truth. Over the years, he had learned to recognize lies, but now he couldn't tell for sure if Nia was sincere or skillfully faking it. I'm going to have to detain you until the circumstances are clear, he finally said. Too much evidence points to you. When Nia was taken away, Parker was alone in the room, going through the notes. Something wasn't adding up in this story. If Nia had really killed her husband, why hadn't the gun been found? And how to explain the fact that she'd returned to work only an hour after the murder, worked her shift quietly, and then discovered the body? Maybe we should have talked to Zaira and Tavon again. What if they weren't just sitting at home watching a movie? What if Tavon's phone conversation with Elijah hadn't ended as peacefully as he claimed? Parker closed his notepad and left the room. The investigation was just beginning, and he had a feeling that this family history was far more complicated than it appeared at first glance. The morning was overcast. Keyshawn Parker parked his car outside a neat one-story house on Maple Avenue. After a night spent working on the case files, he decided to talk to Nia's sister in person. Despite Nia's admission that she had been in the house, many details still didn't add up. He felt the key was in the relationship between the three main figures in this drama. Zaira Rains opened the door after the second bell rang. A short woman with tired eyes and mahogany-colored skin looked haggard. Her hair was pulled back in a sloppy bun, and shadows lingered under her eyes, revealing a sleepless night. "Detective Parker?" She recognized him by his badge. Come on in." The house was cozy, with lots of pictures on the walls. Parker noticed that most of the pictures were of Zaira and Nia at different points in their lives. Childhood, adolescence, adulthood. The sisters were really close. "My husband's at work," Zaira said as she walked him into the living room. "He couldn't take the day off, but he promised to come as soon as you asked." "That's not a problem," Parker replied, taking a seat in the chair. "I can talk to him later. Right now, it's important for me to hear your story." Zaira sat down on the couch, folding her hands in her lap. "Nia has been arrested," she said, not asking but stating. "This is a terrible mistake. My sister couldn't have killed Elijah." "Mrs. Rains," Parker began softly. "At the moment, Nia is being held for questioning. We have evidence pointing to her involvement, but the investigation is ongoing. I'm here to learn more about your relationship with Elijah and Nia, especially in the context of the delicate request you made." Zaira sighed and leaned back on the back of the couch. "You know I can't have children." Parker nodded. "It didn't come out right away. First there were miscarriages, then ectopic pregnancies, surgeries, 8 years of hope and disappointment. Last year, the doctors said there was no chance." She was silent for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Tavon and I looked at different options. Adoption, surrogacy. But I wanted the baby to be genetically related to us. Tavon has health issues too, so I thought about Elijah." "Why him?" Parker asked. "He was part of the family. I've known him for 7 years, ever since he started dating Nia. He's smart, athletic, healthy, I thought he'd understand how much that meant to me. But he said no." Zaira's eyes filled with tears. "Yeah, categorically. Said he couldn't imagine his biological child growing up in another family, even if it was his sister-in-law's family. Said it was against his principles, that he couldn't live knowing that his child was growing up somewhere and he wasn't involved in its upbringing. We suggested that he should be involved. We didn't want to hide the truth from the child, but he was adamant. How did Nia react?" "She was on my side," Zaira said quietly. "She was very upset by Elijah's refusal. They had a big fight about it. Nia thought Elijah was being selfish, that he could do a good deed, bring happiness to the family. She even offered to be a surrogate for us, you know. But that still required a donor, and Elijah was the perfect candidate." Zaira sobbed and wiped away her tears. "Detective, I know what you might be thinking, but neither Nia nor I could have killed Elijah. Yes, we were upset, disappointed, even angry. But murder? Never." Parker made notes in his notebook. "When was the last time you had contact with Elijah?" "In person?" "A couple weeks ago. Tavon and I went over to their house for dinner. It was awkward, but we tried to act normal. Elijah, too. He wasn't a bad person, he had his principles." "And your husband? How did he feel about Elijah's rejection?" Zaira looked away. "Tavon was very upset. He wants a child as much as I do, but he's, more reserved than me. Didn't show his emotions openly." "Tavon called Elijah the night of the murder," Parker said, watching Zaira's reaction. She flinched. "Yes, he told me. Wanted to try again to convince Elijah." But the conversation didn't work out. Elijah said he didn't want to discuss the subject any further. And how did Tavon react? He was upset, of course. We watched a movie, had ice cream, went to bed. It was just a normal night. Parker nodded, not showing his thoughts. Zaira's version matched what Tavon had said, but that didn't mean anything yet. The couple could have coordinated their testimony beforehand. Mrs. Rains, where were you last night between 10 p.m. and midnight? At home with Tavon. We watched Kingdom Heaven, then went to bed around 11:30. Can anyone confirm that? No, but... Zaira paused, realizing it didn't sound convincing. Look, we didn't kill Elijah, and neither did Naya. There has to be some other answer. Parker decided to change the subject. Tell me about your childhood with Naya. Were you always close? Zaira smiled weakly. Yes. We were raised by my mom. My dad left when I was 3 and Nia was 5. We always stuck together. Nia was always protective of me, caring. She's still like that now, willing to do anything for her family. Anything? Parker interjected softly. Zaira realized what she'd said and turned pale. That's not what I meant. Nia loved Elijah. She would never hurt him, not even for me. Parker decided he had gotten enough information from Zaira and turned his attention to the next item of investigation. Back at the Brooks house, he began a more thorough examination of the couple's personal effects. In the bedroom, in the nightstand at Nia's side, he found a leather-bound diary. After obtaining a warrant to seize the personal effects, Parker took the diary and began reading the last entries. May 15th. Talked to Elijah again today about Zaira's request. He still refuses. I don't understand his stubbornness. Can't you make an exception to your principles for the happiness of the family? Zaira is suffering so much. Her last hope of having a child, and Elijah is destroying that hope. I'm angry with him, though I try to understand. But deep down, I'm disappointed. I thought he loved me and my family more. May 18th. Zaira called in tears. Her friend announced her pregnancy, and it has reopened the wound. I feel her pain as my own. Tried to talk to Elijah, but he refuses to discuss the subject. He says his decision is final and non-negotiable. Sometimes I think he's too callous. I can't stop thinking about how one decision of his could change Zaira and Tavon's lives. May 20th. Had a fight with Elijah, a big one. Told him he was selfish, that he didn't realize how important it was for a woman to have a child. He replied that I was manipulating him, pushing guilt. Maybe he's right, but I want so much to help Zaira. She deserves to be happy more than anyone else. Sometimes I hate Elijah for being so stubborn, and then I hate myself for those thoughts. The last entry was dated May 23rd, the day before the murder. Tavon is going to talk to Elijah again. I don't think it will make a difference, but Tavon is determined. Said he would do anything to convince Elijah. Zaira doesn't know about his plan. He doesn't want to give her false hope. I've decided to try again, too. I'll take a break from work tomorrow and go home. Maybe a quiet conversation over a cup of coffee will help change his mind. Parker closed the journal, reflecting. Nia's words about hating her husband might have just been an expression of emotion, but they definitely showed the strength of her feelings. And the last entry confirmed that she had planned to come home, which she had done, even though she had initially denied it. But what about Tavon? We'll do anything to convince Elijah? How far was he willing to go? Parker's next step was to look into Elijah's past. Perhaps therein lurked the reason for such an adamant refusal to help his sister-in-law's family. In his office, at his computer, Parker began gathering information. Elijah Brooks, 34 years old, born in Dallas, Texas, graduated with honors, worked as a financial analyst for a prestigious company. No trouble with the law, excellent credit history. Marriage to Nia, first and only, no children. Parker called Dallas, connecting with the local police department, and asked to pull up any information on Elijah Brooks and his family. An hour later, he got a call back. Detective Parker? Sergeant Wilson from Dallas. Found something interesting about your Elijah Brooks as a teenager. He was listed as a witness in a child abandonment case. His older sister, Lynette Brooks, gave birth at 16 and gave up the baby. The boy was adopted by another family. According to social services records, Elijah was having a hard time, was in psychological counseling. Thank you, Sergeant. That explains a lot, Parker replied. Now Elijah's denial made sense. A man who had gone through the trauma of abandoning a child in his own family was unlikely to easily agree to be a biological father to a child being raised by others, even if they were relatives. Parker went back to the witness list. The neighbor across the street, Mr. Holland, had seen Nia's car the night of the murder, but there was another potential witness the detective hadn't spoken to yet. Mrs. Chen lived across the street and in the house across the street from the Brookses. The elderly woman was famous for constantly watching the neighborhood from her window. Her neighbors jokingly called her Radar. Parker found her at home, busy watering the many plants on the veranda. Mrs. Chen, Detective Parker, Des Plaines Police Department. Can I ask you a few questions about the murder across the street? The small gray-haired woman looked at him carefully and nodded. Of course, Detective. It was a terrible case. Such a nice couple, it seemed. Would you like some tea? Parker politely declined and got straight to the point. Did you see or hear anything unusual the night before last? Oh, yes, Mrs. Chan perked up. I was just watching the evening news and noticed Nia's car around 10 o'clock. Thought it was odd. She's usually at work at that time. Then about an hour later, I saw her drive off. That matches Mr. Holland's testimony. Parker nodded. And anything else? Mrs. Chen leaned closer, as if about to share a secret. There was another car, dark, maybe blue or black, a sedan. Arrived about 15 minutes after Nia left and left around midnight. Parker tensed up. Did you see the driver? Male, tall, thin. I couldn't see much more. It was dark and my eyes aren't what they used to be. Would you recognize this man if you saw him again? Mrs. Chen thought for a moment. Maybe. I'm not sure. But you know what's strange? He didn't ring the doorbell. He just stood there for a while, then took something out of his pocket, a key, I guess, and walked in, like he had access to the house. This was new information. Who, besides Nia, would have keys to the Brooks house? And when the shot was fired, did you hear anything like that? Yeah, there was a loud bang around 12:30, but I thought it was a car in the street or something falling. It wasn't until the next day when the police arrived that I realized what it might have been. Parker thanked Mrs. Chen for the information and headed for his car. The picture was beginning to take shape. Nia was indeed home, as she later admitted, but had left before the murder. Then the mysterious man with the key had shown up, and about an hour after his arrival, the murder had taken place. A dark car. Parker remembered that Tavon Raines had a dark blue Ford Fusion, and he had called Elijah that evening ostensibly to have another talk. Could he have had a key to the Brooks house? Back at the station, Parker discovered that there was new information about the case. Forensics had found microparticles of skin under Elijah's fingernails, a sign of a struggle before death. The DNA test wasn't ready yet, but it could be important evidence. The results of the phone records have also come in. The last call Elijah took was from Tavon at 9:20 p.m. The conversation lasted 6 minutes. Then at 10:15, Elijah called Nia's cell phone, probably when she was already in the house. At 11:10, Nia would call her sister, the conversation lasting 2 minutes. Finally, at 11:30, Tavon called Zaira, probably saying he was running late or something. Parker called Tavon Raines in for questioning. An hour later, a tall, thin man in a strict suit sat across from him in the interrogation room. Mr. Raines, thank you for coming in, Parker began. I have a few additional questions about the evening of the murder. Tavon remained calm, but his fingers tapped the table, a sign of nervousness. Of course, Detective. I want to help. Elijah was a member of our family, despite our differences. You said you called him around 9 o'clock this evening. What was the conversation about? I wanted to try again to convince him to donate to me and Zaira. Elijah was adamant. He said his decision was final and that I shouldn't bring it up again. And how did you react? Tavan sighed. Upset, of course. Disappointed. But I understood his position, even if I didn't agree with it. What did you do after the conversation? I went home to Zaira. We watched a movie, had ice cream, went to bed. Are you sure you didn't leave the house after that? Tavan tensed slightly. Absolutely. I was home all night. Parker decided to use surprise tactics. Minus Mr. Raines. We have a witness who saw a dark car outside the Brooks house around 11:30 at night. A man matching your description entered the house with a key. About half an hour later, the witness heard a gunshot. Tavan's face turned pale, but he kept his composure. This witness is wrong. I wasn't there. Then explain why you called your wife at 11:30. Isn't it strange to call home if you said you were at home? Tavan swallowed. Yeah, I went out to the drugstore. Zaira had a migraine, needed some pills. I called to ask what kind to buy. It's interesting that you didn't mention it before, Parker said. And it's even more interesting that your wife didn't mention it either, claiming that you were both home all evening. That's a minor detail, Tavan shrugged. I was at the drugstore for 20 minutes tops, didn't think it was important. How did you get a key to the Brooks house? I don't have a... Tavan paused. Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah, I have a key. Nia gave us a spare in case they needed someone to water the flowers while they were on vacation or something. But I didn't use it that night. I wasn't there. Parker asked a few more questions, but Tavan stood firm. He wasn't at the Brooks house the night of the murder. His story about the pharmacy, however, did not come out until after the witness stand, which undermined the credibility of his words. After the interrogation, Parker sent officers to check nearby pharmacies and their surveillance cameras. If Tavan was telling the truth, his visit should have remained on the tapes. At the end of the day, the detective gathered all the available evidence. He had two main suspects: Nia, who had been at the house shortly before the murder and had a motive to protect her sister's interests, and Tavan, who may have come after Nia and confronted Elijah. But something still didn't add up. Parker remembered Mrs. Chen's testimony again. She had seen the mysterious visitor enter the house with the key, walked in quietly, without hiding. If Tavan was planning a murder, would he come in so openly, risking being seen by the neighbors? And what about the gun? No gun was found at the crime scene or in Nia's possession. If Tavan was the killer, it was logical to assume he'd taken the weapon with him. Parker went over the ME's report again. Elijah was shot in the chest at close range. The lack of signs of a struggle on the body, other than microparticles of skin under the fingernails, suggested that the confrontation was brief or that the victim knew his attacker and did not expect an attack. That evening, Parker received a call from the crime lab. The DNA under Elijah's fingernails belonged to a man. The analysis hadn't been completed yet, but it definitely wasn't Nia's DNA. The detective leaned back in his chair, mulling over the information. If Tavan was in the house and had a confrontation with Elijah, his DNA could have ended up under the victim's fingernails. That would be a crucial piece of evidence. Parker decided to check one more detail. He called St. Elizabeth's Hospital and asked for surveillance footage of the employee parking lot. If Nia had indeed returned to work after a visit home, her car should have reappeared in the parking lot around 11 o'clock at night. They sent him the footage in the morning. Nia's silver Toyota Camry pulled into the parking lot at 11:18 p.m. Nia got out of the car, adjusted her uniform, and walked briskly toward the hospital entrance. Nothing in her demeanor indicated that she had just participated in or witnessed a murder. Another piece of the mosaic fell into place. Nia had indeed left the house before the murder, just as she claimed. This greatly reduced the likelihood of her involvement. The next day, the results of the pharmacy inspection came back. None of the 3 pharmacies within a 5-mile radius of the Rains house had records of Tavan's visit the night of the murder. No purchase records, no surveillance camera images. Parker called Tavan in for a second interview. This time, he had specific questions and new evidence. The 3 days following the murder of Elijah Brooks had been a busy 3 days for Detective Keyshawn Parker. After questioning Tavan and finding inconsistencies in his story, Parker was almost certain that he was the killer. However, the morning brought an unexpected turn of events. Lab tests revealed that the DNA found under Elijah's fingernails did not belong to Tavan. Comparative analysis ruled it out. What's more, a preliminary check found no matches with any of the samples in the database, which meant that either the killer was never on the police radar, or, this DNA had nothing to do with the murder at all. Parker tapped his pen on the desk. His main theory was crumbling. If not Tavan, then who? Go back to the Nia version? But the hospital cameras confirmed her return to work before the murder. Parker decided to take another hard look at the crime scene. Maybe they missed something. The Brooks house stood quiet and empty. Yellow police tape still blocked the entrance, but inside there was no longer the hustle and bustle of the early days of the investigation. Parker walked slowly through the rooms, trying to recreate the events of that night. Nia arrives around 10, she and Elijah drinking coffee, talking, probably arguing about the donation again. Then Nia leaves. A neighbor and the hospital's parking lot footage confirm it. But what happens afterward? Someone arrives, a dark car, a man with a key. Shot around 12:30. Parker returned to the bedroom and began a more thorough examination. The first hours of the investigation focused on the living room, where the body was found, and the bathroom, where traces of blood were found. The bedroom was examined, but perhaps not thoroughly enough. He opened Nia's closet, going through her things. Nothing suspicious. Checked the nightstands, the dresser. All he found under the bed was a pair of house slippers and a box of winter clothes. Then Parker went to Elijah's closet. In the far corner, behind the shoeboxes, he noticed a small safe. Interesting that it hadn't been mentioned in the reports. Perhaps CSI hadn't found it, or hadn't given it much thought. Parker called for a technician with equipment to open the safe. While he waited, he continued his inspection and discovered another interesting detail. There was a barely visible brown dot on the carpet in the corner of the bedroom, under the chair. Blood. He made a note to have forensics check it out. The specialist arrived 40 minutes later and quickly tackled the safe. Inside, Parker found several documents: Elijah's will, a large insurance policy naming Nia as the beneficiary, and of particular interest to the detective, a small notebook. Flipping through it, Parker realized it was Elijah's personal diary. The last entry was dated the day of the murder. Nia came again with the same request. "I don't understand why she can't respect my decision. I explained the reasons over and over again, but she keeps pushing, manipulating, appealing to guilt. Today she threatened to leave if I didn't help Zaira. Said family comes first. I love her, but I can't go against my principles." Tavan called too. He was aggressive, which is uncharacteristic of him. "I know they're all hurting, but I can't do what they're asking. Maybe Nia and I need to take a break, a temporary separation to think things over. I'll tell her that when she gets back tonight." Parker reread the entry several times. It was changing the picture of events. Elijah knew that Nia was planning to return in the evening, even though she'd originally claimed she'd stayed at work all night. And more importantly, Elijah was going to suggest that she break up. The motive was becoming clearer. Nia, who was devoted to her sister, learns that her husband not only refuses to help Zaira, but wants to break up. This could be the final straw. Parker called in the forensics team to re-examine the house with the new details. He asked for special attention to the bedroom and the brown stain on the carpet. The next step was to check the insurance policy. A call to the insurance company confirmed that the $500,000 policy had been issued only 3 months ago. Quite a large sum and convenient timing. Parker requested full details of the policy, including who initiated it. Meanwhile, forensics confirmed the stain on the bedroom carpet was blood. What's more, the analysis showed that it was Elijah's blood. But most interestingly, they found a small void in the wall behind the dresser. A void about the size of a medium-caliber pistol. Parker asked them to expand the search to the entire house, paying special attention to potential hiding places. An hour later, the call came in. A 19-caliber Glock pistol wrapped in a towel was found in the bathroom air duct. Preliminary examination revealed that it was the murder weapon. Fingerprints on the gun were partial but sufficient for identification. Analysis matched Nia Brooks' prints. The picture of the crime begins to emerge. Nia arrives home at 10 p.m. She and Elijah talk. Maybe he tells her about his decision to break up. Nia, already upset by his refusal to help her sister, can't take it anymore. She takes a gun, probably kept in the bedroom, contrary to her claim that there were no guns in the house, shoots her husband in the living room, then tries to cover her tracks, hiding the gun, washing the blood off her hands, then returns to the hospital to create an alibi for herself, and in the morning, discovers the body. But why did she go back to work? Why didn't she fake a robbery or try to get rid of the body? Perhaps it was an impulsive killing and Nia panicked, not knowing what to do next. Parker decided it was time for a final interrogation of Nia Brooks. In the interrogation room, Nia looked haggard. Dark circles under her eyes, chapped lips. She clearly hadn't slept in several nights. "Mrs. Brooks," Parker began, "we have new evidence in the case of your husband's death." "I've already told you everything I know," Nia replied tiredly. "I was home, we talked, I left. He was alive when I left." "We found the gun that killed your husband." Parker watched her reaction carefully. "It was hidden in your bathroom air duct. Your fingerprints were found on it." Nia flinched, her eyes widening. "That's impossible. I never touched the gun. We had no weapons in the house. We also found Elijah's journal," Parker continued. "In the last entry, made on the day of the murder, he writes that he was going to suggest that you break up. Temporarily." Nia lowered her head. He told me about it when I came to talk to him. Said he couldn't take the pressure from me anymore, that we needed time to think. But I didn't kill him over it. I was upset, yes, but not that upset. We also checked the insurance policy." Parker paused. $500,000, issued 3 months ago. By a strange coincidence, about the same time your sister found out she couldn't have children and started looking for alternatives. "That doesn't mean anything." Nia shook her head. Elijah had offered to take out the insurance. It was a smart financial decision. "Smart for whom, Mrs. Brooks?" Parker asked quietly. "For you? For your sister, who doesn't need a donor now. She'll have money for the best specialists. For any medical procedures?" "No." Nia's voice trembled. "You have it all wrong. I loved Elijah. Yes, I was angry at him for refusing to help Zaira, but I would never—" "We also found blood in the bedroom," Parker interrupted her. "Elijah's blood. Why is it there if you claim you left before the murder?" Nia turned pale. "I don't know. Maybe he went there after he was wounded. Maybe the murderer—" "Mrs. Brooks." Parker stepped forward. "All the evidence points to you. Your prints on the gun, your motive, Elijah's journal. Why keep denying the obvious?" "Because I didn't kill him!" Nia screamed. "I couldn't have done it!" Parker decided to change tactics. "You know, I understand you, Nia." His voice softened. "You love your sister. You want her to be happy. Elijah could have given her that happiness with one simple act. But he refused. And then he decided to break up with you. You felt betrayed, rejected. In that moment, you saw only one way out." Nia stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "No," she whispered. "No, you don't understand." "Then explain it to me." Parker pushed a notebook and pen toward her. "Write down what really happened. Not for me, for yourself, for your sister. Nia took the pen with trembling fingers, started to write, then stopped. She looked at Parker for a long moment. I want to tell you, but not like this. She set the pen aside. I'll tell you what happened. The whole truth. Parker turned on the recorder and nodded. I actually got home around 10, Nia began. I wanted to talk to Elijah about Zaire again. We drank coffee, talked. At first it was quiet. Then he said he was tired of the subject, that I was only thinking about Zaire, not us. Said we needed time apart. I cried, begged him not to do it. Then I got angry, accused him of being selfish. We had a fight. She took a deep breath. I left. I really left. I went back to the hospital as the cameras showed, but I called Zaire, told her about the conversation that Elijah wanted to break up. She was furious, said she'd talk to him herself. I didn't think much of it. I thought she was just blowing off steam. Parker frowned. That didn't match the phone records. Nia had called Zaire at 11:10, not right after she left the house. Go on, he said. The morning I got home and found Elijah, Nia sobbed. I knew right away. I didn't know for sure, but I felt it. Zaire. She'd always been impulsive, passionate. When she wants something, there's no stopping her. Are you saying your sister killed Elijah? Parker asked. I don't know, Nia exclaimed. I really don't know, but she might have. Or Tavon. They were both desperate for a baby. And now that Elijah's dead, we'll have the insurance money. Enough for the best clinics, for any procedures. Parker hesitated. It sounded like an attempt to shift the blame to his sister and her husband. But what if there was some truth to it? Mrs. Brooks, if you didn't kill your husband, how do you explain your prints on the gun? Nia shook her head. I don't. I swear I've never seen that gun. Maybe someone's setting me up. Who? Your sister? The person you're so desperately protecting? Nia didn't answer, only cried silently. At that moment, an officer entered the room and handed Parker a note. After reading it, the detective frowned even more. Mrs. Brooks, forensics has completed the DNA analysis on the gun. In addition to your fingerprints, traces of DNA from your sister, Zaire Rains, were found on it. Nia raised her head, her eyes widening. No, she whispered. That's impossible. We also tested the DNA found under your husband's fingernails, Parker continued. It belongs to a woman. We'll compare it to your sister's DNA, but I think the result is already obvious. Nia covered her face with her hands. She didn't mean it, she said through her tears. She just wanted to talk to him, to convince him. You knew, Parker stated. You knew from the beginning that your sister killed Elijah. No. Nia raised her head. I suspected, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to believe it. Zaire is my sister, my only family. I couldn't. So, you tried to take the blame. Parker nodded. To protect your sister, even at the cost of your freedom. I loved Elijah, Nia said quietly. But Zaire, she'd always been there for me, my whole life. And she suffered so much for not being able to have children. You can't imagine what she went through. Surgery, treatment, pain, hope, disappointment, over and over again. Elijah could have helped her. It was so simple, but he refused. That doesn't justify murder, Parker said softly. I know, Nia looked into his eyes. I know, but I couldn't betray her. Parker turned off the recorder. Mrs. Brooks, I need an official statement from you. What happened the night of the murder? Nia took a deep breath. I got home at 10, talked to Elijah, had an argument, and left. Went back to the hospital, called Zaire at 11:10, told her about the fight. She was furious. I don't know what happened afterward, but I suspect Zaire went to Elijah's. She had a spare key. They must have had a fight, and Nia couldn't finish the sentence. And she shot him, Parker finished. And then she hid the gun in your house, knowing that you would be the prime suspect. No, Nia exclaimed. Zaira wouldn't have set me up on purpose. She just panicked, didn't know what to do. Parker nodded. Naya was still protective of her sister, even after everything that had happened. We'll check your story, he said. But the evidence against your sister is strong. DNA on the gun, DNA under the victim's fingernails, and motive. Nia nodded silently, tears continuing to flow down her faces. After receiving Nia's official statement, Parker sent a team to apprehend Zaira Rains. He decided to attend the arrest himself. He wanted to see the woman's reaction. Zaira opened the door, still in her home clothes despite the late hour. When she saw the police officers, she turned pale. Zaira Rains, Parker began formally. You are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Elijah Brooks. You have the right to remain silent. Zaira didn't resist being handcuffed. She looked small and frightened. Only when she was being led to the police car did she turn to Parker. Does Nia know? She asked quietly. Yes, Parker answered. She was trying to protect you, to take the blame. Zaira closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. She always protected me, she whispered. All her life. But not this time. Not this time. At the station, Zaira asked to see her sister before the formal interrogation. Parker, after consulting with the prosecutor, authorized a brief, supervised meeting. The sisters sat across from each other at a table. Zaira, handcuffed, looked at Nia with pain and remorse. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean for things to turn out this way. I just wanted to talk to him, to convince him. But he said such horrible things. About you, about me. Said you deserve better than a sister who uses you for her own ends. That I was ruining your marriage. I lost control. Saw the gun in the bedroom, took it. I know, Naya replied quietly. I know. I didn't mean to kill him, Zaira continued. I swear. I just wanted to scare him, to make him listen. But he tried to take the gun away, and we struggled, and a gunshot. I don't remember pulling the trigger. I just remember his face, surprised, scared, and then the blood. Nia reached across the table, took her sister's hands in her own. I love you, she said. No matter what happens, I will always love you. Zaira nodded, unable to speak because of the tears. I'm sorry, she finally squeezed out. I'm so sorry that I got you into this, that you lost your husband because of me, that I ruined your life. You're my sister, Nia replied simply. My family. We'll get through this. Together. Parker, watching the scene, understood the tragedy of the situation. Two sisters, bound by deep love, were drawn into a crime out of desperation and pain. Zaira, unable to come to terms with childlessness and Elijah's refusal to help, committed the irreparable. Nia, devoted to her sister to the end, was willing to sacrifice her freedom for her. After meeting with her sister, Zaira made a full confession to the murder of Elijah Brooks. She confirmed that she had acted alone, without the knowledge of Tavon or Naya. Impulsively, in a fit of rage, without planning the crime in advance. Nia was released from custody. But tragedy changed her life forever. She lost her husband and will likely lose her sister for years to come, who was awaiting trial and imminent imprisonment. As he wrapped up the case report, Parker thought about how desperation and pain can push a person to extreme measures. How love, for a child who never was, for a sister who was always there, can cause tragedy. And how sometimes principles, no matter how firm, have too high a price.